All right now, we're going to turn it up even a little harder. This man here last year, when we had a rally here last year, him and God bless Mike Vanderbone of the 60th Street Irregulars had lit this place up. I mean, we got it roaring. But this guy's going to come up here. He got the first hands on what's going on over the east, and I'll let him speak his mind because the Holy Ghost is filling him. His name is Gavin Seim. Let's come on up and give it to him.
Let's get rid of that stand for a minute. Give myself a little wiggle room here. So I'll try not to get too wild. Hey, what a great thing to see all these people out here standing up on a day like this. I don't know, I'm going to say there's probably 300 or 400 here. I'm sure the news media will say there were at least dozens.
Yeah, like the 50 in Portland.
But that's great. This is great. Who wants to kneel with me? I don't care if it's wet. You can stand if it hurts to kneel. Father in heaven, Yahweh, we ask that you give us wisdom. We face trying times for our families and our children and our neighborhoods and our states and our communities. We want to learn to love our neighbor, God. We want to learn to stand up for the weak and the fatherless and the widow. And we know that this nation has failed in so many ways to defend the innocent from conception to grave. We've failed. This is on us. And we point the fingers at everybody, often at ourselves, and we point at parties and we point at factions. But what we need to do is we need to know real law. We need to repent. We need to fulfill that true and just foundation of law, which is to love God and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And so we ask that you'll give us strength and deliverance and give us a refuge, God, and liberty, because if we do not find hope and deliverance soon, we will be destroyed. So we ask for your intervention. We ask for your intervention with our patriots. We ask that you'll break these shackles and chains and tear down these walls of tyranny and injustice all across this land and across this world, and let us stand up for what is right. Amen. So somewhere, I think my wife's around here somewhere. If you see her, say hello. My brother, I think, will be here in a minute too, Nathan. And I just want to thank my family and all of you guys for everything people are doing. I think Lavoy and Ammon and the people down in the refuge, they showed us what it means to be founding fathers. They showed us what it means to stand up and stand for liberty. And can you give me a little more slack there just in case, or is that it? And so we need to stop, I think. We need to ask ourselves, we have all this division, and I see the political groups, and I see the patriot factions, and the parties, and everybody wants to point the finger at everyone else. Everybody wants to say, well, it's their fault, and it's their fault. And I want to say something, it's my fault.
Talk into the mic, we can't hear you back here.
And it's your fault. It's all of our fault because we are bound by conscience to stand up against the atrocities of what is called justice. Due process does not exist in these courts, and for years we've looked at other factions and we've said, well, they're too radical, or they did something we didn't like, so lock them away. We cannot commit anyone to the hands of injustice and call ourselves righteous friends. We have to defend everyone, and we need to unite. Everyone is divided against everyone, and I was thinking about this when I watched Ammon's video the other day, and he was talking about Martin Luther King, and we look at these different people, and sometimes we don't agree with everything they did, but we look at different movements and different people, and the message is the same. I was standing there in Portland earlier, and we had the counter-protesters across the street, and they had these signs with hearts that said, we love our public lands, and I said, well, I do too. We're on the same side. We need to stop letting a coercive and extortive government divide us, one against another, father against son, and black against white, and race against race. We need to unite in liberty. And I look at news, and everyone has a spin. You know, on one side, we're the terrorists, and on the other side, it's this faction that's the terrorists. And I come into cities like this and capitals and places like Oregon, and I look at these marble halls where these people sit thinking they are gods over a people of liberty. And they do not know law, and they do not know justice because they do not know God, and they do not love their neighbor as themselves.
Yeah.
Preach it, Gavin.
I see us always worrying about ISIS or the Muslims. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to tolerate Sharia law on my street for a moment, but the difference is, if that comes to my street, no one will fault me for defending myself. When the arm of these tyrants comes to my street, I become the terrorist if I defend my family and my neighbor. These and our judges sitting in their black robes and in their marble halls are the greatest terrorists in this world because they defy the rule of law. Law is this: love your neighbor as yourself. But it is summed up superseding our Constitution, which, as beautiful as it is, this document right here grants me and you nothing. I do not have my rights from government. I have my rights from the God of heaven, and government cannot take them away. And I'm constantly seeing us make excuses. We say, well, you're a felon. And I say, well, what's a felon? Well, a felon might be standing on this step in the rain, standing in the wrong position next to the eagle, because that's a felony now. Everything is a felony to a treasonous and tyrant government. They use words against us. They call us terrorists when they are the terrorists. I dare anyone who does not believe this to go into a courtroom, feel the terror that happens in every single courtroom in every county of this nation. And do not tell me, if you're a police officer or if you're a politician, do not tell me that your courts are mostly good. I love my neighbor. I don't care who they are. I don't hate anybody. People say, well, Gavin, you hate government or you hate police. And I will say, no, my government hates law. And I love law. And I love justice. And I love liberty. And so you show me a good police officer, and I will show you a police officer who is standing with us. And some of them do. Unfortunately, those seem to be the ones that get fired. Show me police officers, show me sheriffs who are walking into these courtrooms of terror and arresting the terrorists in black robes. Let's not mince words anymore. Our words have power. We have compromised our words, friends, for too long. We have said, well, I'll work within the system, and I'm going to shake hands with them over here, but I'm going to say they're corrupt over here. They cannot be both. You do not mix righteousness with evil. You do not mix liberty with tyranny, and you do not mix a land of slaves with a nation of liberty, because you cannot have both. And we have become a nation of slaves. We need to cross the lines of faction and only stand with principle. And when I say unite, I don't mean unite by going and saying, well, we're gonna compromise a little bit. We're gonna give up some of your gun rights, NRA. We're gonna give up a few of your gun rights so we can keep a few of them over here. I do not compromise on my rights. I don't compromise on my children's birthright. And I'm tired of compromise of words, but we need to unite with those who want liberty. And sometimes the approach is the wrong way. Sometimes we look at a group or a faction or a movement and we're frustrated because we say, you're doing it the wrong way. And oftentimes in this nation we see the emphasis put on race or put on faction or put on party. It doesn't need to be any of those things. It needs to be one simple 3-word phrase. Maybe it's 4. I'm counting bad today. It's been a long day. Love your neighbor as yourself. When you love your neighbor as yourself, you fulfill law, because you cannot abuse your neighbor and love them as yourself. It's as simple as that. And from that came the principles of law that go back to before the Constitution, which are these: life, liberty, and property equally for all. We hold these truths to be self-evident. And from that, our Constitution was written, not perfect in every way, not to give us rights, not to grant us anything at all, but to affirm wholeheartedly that these rights are ours. And I'm sick and tired of politicians and bureaucrats and slaves to tyranny saying, well, what about this or what about that? I do not negotiate my rights, and shall not means exactly what it says. When we tell government shall not, it means one thing: you shall not touch this liberty. And so in closing, I just want to reiterate the words that I'm not always capable of reiterating as clearly as I should. And I think we saw this in Lavoie. We saw a man who laid down his life for his friends. We saw a man who loved his neighbor. And we saw a man who increasingly was saying we need to work together across factions and across race and across lines. But we must stand for liberty. We need to unite with those not who abuse their neighbor, but who love their neighbor. On rights, on justice, and on liberty, we must compromise not at all. But on pettiness and on division, we must throw it away. And this goes all the way back to the founding of this nation. There was many different beliefs, there was many different people, and sometimes they got in fistfights down at the pub. But at the end of the day, they knew where they stood. They stood with liberty. We need to appeal to heaven. We need to seek liberty. We need to stand on that, because we have right now, all of us here, let us make no pretense, we wear the shackles of a slave. And I am tired of wearing the shackle of a slave. Everything in this nation, down to the humble traffic ticket, is a crime punishable by death. And that is not law. And if you think I am wrong, you try it. Try not paying your traffic ticket and watch them remove your license, and then try exercising your right to travel. And then when they try and lock you in a cage, try to defend yourself and your family, and they will put a bullet in your head and put you in a box. That is not justice. That is a death penalty. And so in closing, I just encourage everybody, we need to unite in principle. And the principle is this: love your neighbor and life, liberty, and property. Because if it is not within those boundaries, it is not principle, it is not justice, and it is certainly not law. What these men in these buildings are making, what these terrorists are creating and writing with their pens, it is not law. It has no part in law. It is void the moment it is written. It is lawless, and it must be disobeyed by the principled, self-governing people. We must stand together, or we will hang individually. Thank you.